Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Odyssey House Journals, a podcast aimed at exploring all the topics relating to addiction and recovery. And if you'll notice the background here, it's not our usual sexy studio that we have. And I don't have my normal co-host with me. And I have some news on both of those. We're going to be operating out of a new studio when COVID leaves us, if it ever does. And I'm going to have a new co-host, but that'll be a surprise in the future. But right now, I am pleased to have as a guest today on Odyssey House Journals, Adam Cohen, who is the CEO of Odyssey House. Welcome, Adam.
Great to be here, Randall. It's great to see you virtually, even though we work about 20 feet away from each other.
Well, the reason I asked for you to be on this podcast is I wanted, while I have you live, semi-live on the air, it's recorded, but we're sort of live, is so I could ask you, first of all, for a pay raise.
Perfect. Good morning to you, Randall, too.
This will be my last day at Odyssey House because I just did that. No, in all seriousness, Adam, one of the reasons I wanted to get you on is I have a friend who is, shall we say, middle-aged. I'm old now, so middle-aged to me is 50s, early 60s, okay? And she is a therapist in private practice. And I was talking to her one day about, do you ever refer your clients to Odyssey House? And her comment to me, and it sort of shocked me because I've worked here for 3 years now, is she talked about some of the horrible stories she's heard about our program and the draconian measures that we take to help people in recovery. And so I thought, who better than you, who's been around Odyssey as CEO for how long, 20 years?
I've been the CEO for 11, but I've worked here for 20, yeah.
For 20 years. So you have a pretty good working knowledge of the program after all that time. And she was bringing up things like, she didn't have the good word for it, and I think the word was marathon, but she said, we've heard stories about you locking people in dark rooms and trying to get them to cry and come clean and reveal their innermost feelings and everything, which is something we don't do now. But I guess maybe it would benefit us to explore the origins of Odyssey and then how we have modified over the years. So it's all yours.
Well, that's a 50-year history. I don't know that we have all the time to do all of that, but I can give kind of a broad overview of who we are as an organization and our identity and where we come from. And
when we started back in the 60s, or late 60s, I guess it was a much different time in America in terms of America itself, as well as how we dealt with things like addiction. So can you talk about that?
Sure. So the origin of Odyssey, the beginnings of Odyssey House was Judy Ann Denson Gerber was a psychiatrist, and she worked in an acute hospital and kept seeing heroin addicts coming in and out of the hospital and just repeat. They'd go in, get sober, leave, and then they come back days later. And she was frustrated with that. So, and thought that there's a better way to do it. So she and 17 heroin addicts in the mid 60s, 1966, created Odyssey House, and we were the first psychiatrically enhanced modified therapeutic community in the world, and that's important to note because that innovation has spanned our entire history, and having that framework of having being pioneers in treatment really does reflect who we are as an organization, who we want to be in the future, always trying something new. So generally,
what you said, therapeutically enhanced or psychologically enhanced therapeutic community. What does that mean?
So it psychiatrically enhanced therapeutic community. So it means that traditional therapeutic communities are generally peer-run, peer-led programs. In our founding, we acknowledged that the reason for people's substance use is because of underlying mental health conditions, underlying family discord, underlying medical conditions that are untreated. So that brings the framework and of, okay, well, we need to treat them medically, but also there's a lot of value in peer-to-peer interaction, and very similar to what AA is, and having peer-to-peer, somebody who's been through the recovery process, coaching people who are early in the recovery process and dragging them up into recovery.
In other words, I'm a heroin addict, you're a heroin addict, and I'm in long-term recovery and you're not, and you'll believe me more than you will somebody else because I've been there, done that.
Sure. So having that peer relationship, that I know what you're going through, but it doesn't stop there. That's kind of the flaw of the traditional old school therapeutic communities that have long been abandoned. But in our founding, we knew that we needed to have professional help. So we had, Judy was a psychiatrist, but we had therapists and we had psychologists and all different multidisciplinary team to help treat the individuals. So that's our evolution or that's our beginning. And over time, we created programs for specific populations, adolescent treatment. Odyssey House was the first mothers with children program in the country. That was Maybon back in New York. Mothers and Babies Off Narcotics was the program, and we established it here as well. And so Odyssey House moved from New York to Utah to New Hampshire, New Orleans, Texas, Australia, and New Zealand, and a few others. And we were unified for the first 15 or so years, and then split up into individual organizations that are locally governed by our nonprofit board of directors, and so then we've evolved differently from the other Odyssey houses in the world. We share a history, we share that sense of innovation, but we've evolved to adapt to our local community, and Utah looks a whole lot different than Harlem or New Orleans or Detroit. So we adapt our programming and service delivery system to meet who comes to our door.
What were some of the images that my therapist friend was talking about that no longer exist?
Well, first of all, there's been myths that are out there that were never true, and then there are things that we did early on that we don't do anymore. So I think oftentimes we're needing to do myth busting pretty regularly on no, we don't lock people in rooms alone. No, we're not yelling and screaming at people, all of that kind of stuff. Yeah, so it's hard. Some of the rumors and myths out there are interesting because they seem outlandish, and sometimes they're based in a fragment of reality, but not always. So
now let's talk about Odyssey now. What if somebody comes into an Odyssey residential program for addiction, heroin, meth, alcohol, whatever? How is that person treated, and what can they expect to find in a residential setting at Odyssey?
Sure. So, first of all, you're going to be treated by professional staff who know what they're doing and are experienced with addictions treatment and mental health treatment. So they're going to get an assessment. They're going to see a primary care provider to identify any medical needs and psychiatric needs that they might have. But on a day-to-day basis, you're going to be going into a residential setting, and the thing, with the thing that you experience is when you walk into the building, you have a community that is positive and is working toward the same goal of recovery, and that that the typical so to speak, con code is rejected in that type of environment where you have accountability and you care for one another and you care about your environment and that it makes it a safe environment to do the work that you need to do. So you feel comfortable to talk about past traumas or talk about your mental health problems that are coming up, and just evening out that playing field so that you feel like it's a safe place to be able to do that important work.
So, and you're comfortable because you're on the same level with other people who are going through the same thing. So it's a lot different than if you went into a group of people who had never suffered from a substance use disorder or anything else and wouldn't understand, which is one reason why a therapeutic community is successful. In my opinion, by the way, I'm a recovering alcoholic, and this program is not, even though we call it Odyssey House Journals, it's not aimed at directing somebody to Odyssey House necessarily, but if you need help, to seek help however you can find it. And one of the numbers that we're going to put up on the screen is our admissions office number. It doesn't mean you have to say I'm coming in, but it's 801-322-3222. And if you just have questions about a program or about whether you need a program or what kinds of programs are being offered, not just with Odyssey, but everywhere, just call that number and somebody will be there to help you, or leave a voicemail and you will, I guarantee, get a call back. The interesting thing about Odyssey, when I talk to people, Adam, is people don't realize that they'll have like one of our buildings, like in an area that they drive by every day, and they'll say, well, that's Odyssey House. And I'll say, you don't understand. We're a rather large organization, and we serve a varied group of people, different kinds of people. Can you sort of elaborate on that? And again, I'm not trying to push Odyssey House, but I'd like to get the facts out about so people understand what it is we do.
Sure. So we have a like you said, a number of different programs and services that we offer. So we operate the full continuum of care for adults. So that means high intensity residential, day treatment, intensive outpatient, early intervention services for adults. We do the same for adolescents. We do the same for parents with dependent children. We have a children's mental health program where we have therapists going into 4 of the districts in Salt Lake County. So we're doing elementary, middle, and high school aged kids, doing mental health work with them and some substance use work. We have our Martindale Clinic, which is an integrated primary care clinic. So you can get your physical health needs addressed there. Also, you can get your mental health needs and SUD needs. So you can get mental health meds. You can get Suboxone or Vivitrol for heroin and alcohol use. We have
and the clinic also serves people in the community as well.
Yeah, anybody can go.
For us.
Yeah, anybody can go to the Martindale Clinic, whether or not you're a patient of Odyssey House in our behavioral health services. We have sober living throughout the community. And then we offer the cats and dogs programs in the Salt Lake County jails. And that's essentially cats is a 90-day residential program in the jail. And when you complete that, you can transition into community-based care either with us or with another provider in the community, but gives you a head start on treatment while you're in jail. And then dogs is just an outpatient service in the jail that just gets people acquainted with treatment and connects them to treatment in the community when they're released.
A lot of people are not familiar with the CATS program. I've been able to be in the various pods that we have out at the jail, and I don't think people realize actually it's if I had to go to jail for a drug offense, I think I'd want to go to the CATS program as being in the general population. But how it works is you're offered an option where you request to get in, and then you go to a specific pod. Can you sort of explain that?
Yeah, so you can get in basically two ways. One, your judge orders you to do CATS, or you're in jail and you request to do CATS when you're in jail. And what happens is you're moved out of general population. You're actually moved from, if you're a man, you move from the Metro jail to the Oxbow jail and go to a separate pod where the whole pod is doing CATS. It's our own program in the jail. And then if you're a woman, you go to a specific pod in the Metro jail.
And I know you have studies that show how much spending that 3-month program in jail, as opposed to being just in general population, helps reduce recidivism by large numbers.
Yeah, so an independent study done by Salt Lake County showed that people who did the CATS program were 92% less likely to recidivate over the next 3 years. That's an astonishing number.
It really is.
Yeah, and I think everybody was like, whoa. But it works, and the reason why it works is that you're doing work, you're getting treatment, but you're also getting access to treatment in the community when you leave, and you have access to healthcare, and you have access to MAT, both prior to release and post release. So you're really set up to succeed doing that.
You know, you brought up those 3 letters MAT, and I think one of the significant changes in our entire program, I'm not talking about jail right now, is our approach to in the old days, it was sobriety was the goal, total sobriety. So if you were maybe you can explain the concept of harm reduction and MAT and how it works in our program. And because people on the outside may, when I first heard about it, I thought, really? I mean, I'm a recovering alcoholic, and it's like, to me, it sounds like, well, I could have a few drinks a day and I'd be okay. But it's different than that. But that's typical alcoholic thinking, I guess. So.
Yeah, I think what you're talking about is harm reduction versus MAT, which is
Well, but MAT is part of harm reduction.
Kinda. So harm reduction really looks at making continued use to be manageable over time, and safe. So like harm reduction would include needle exchange and management of drug or alcohol use over time. So MAT, and not saying there's a need for that in the community, absolutely, MAT is different in that Suboxone or buprenorphine, Vivitrol, and methadone are all evidence-based medicine to help address addiction problems long term, and they can be used in any type of fashion. So, in basically in two ways: short-term use of those medicines while you're getting into early recovery, or long-term, and both are viable. Some people are on methadone or Suboxone for many, many years, and they're doing quite well, and they're in recovery. And some people need to do Suboxone to help, or methadone to help with their detox, or help engage with treatment, and that works. So what it really means is those medicines help get people engaged with the recovery process without having that awful detox feeling. And we also know that after a period of sobriety, if you were to go out and use, you might overdose. And so continued use of Suboxone at low levels helps make sure that you don't have the cravings that you might have. And it's not like you're high. You're not high. The purpose of Suboxone or methadone is just this low level so you don't go into detox. So you're not withdrawing from that. So it's a valuable tool as it relates to proximity to treatment, and getting people to engage. It removes barriers, and it works. It works really well. And I think, I mean, Randall, you're talking about historically versus who we are now, and many years ago, early on, methadone, MAT wasn't allowed here. It has been allowed for many years now, and we know it works. And I think that's like the embrace of data and of knowledge that we get over the years, we adopt into our service delivery system.
That is a huge reduction at the county jail. It makes a lot of sense. Back to our original topic, which we got waylaid on. We were talking about then and now. So what's the big difference? How has Odyssey changed things for somebody coming in for treatment?
Sure. So the first, probably the most dramatic thing that you'd see is the length of stay in residential is dramatically different than it was 20 years ago or 50 years ago. Oftentimes people were in treatment for 2 or 3 years in residential. No. So, and we know that, that is, we know we've adapted over the years. We know that engagement in treatment for a long period of time is very important, but the level of care is also very important. A residential stay for 2 or 3 years is inappropriate. And we learn that with new data. And so what we've done is we've created lower levels of care so people can drop down in their acuity when they can drop down in level of care to an outpatient level or a day treatment level, and continue treatment for a period of time. And that movement in that continuum of care is fluid. So if you're doing well, you can go down in from residential to an outpatient setting. If you're not doing so well and you need some additional help, you can go back up into residential for a period of time and then move back down. And so that is truly individualized treatment, that you come into residential for a period of time, you move down, or you start at an outpatient level of care and you stay at an outpatient level of care. It just depends on what you need. So while we believe that people being engaged in treatment for a year or 18 months is probably a good idea, it doesn't have to be at the highest intensity level of care, and it shouldn't be unless you need it. The other thing that I'd say is dramatically different is the full-scale embrace of MAT. And we know that MAT is quite frankly, is the gold standard in addictions treatment, for particularly for opioids. And so we're talking about the blend of behavioral health treatment, talk therapy, and all of that all of those things coupled with medicine that we know works. And so when you do that, you're getting the best treatment that you can. And that has evolved. The field has evolved over the last 20 years, and as such, we have too. So we have people who are on Suboxone, we have people who are on methadone, we have people who are on Vivitrol or naltrexone, and all of those things work, and they keep people in treatment. They keep people safe. They're it's a new day, and because data drives our decision making.
And we'll have a lot of changes in the future as new data comes in, I suppose.
Sure. The more, I'm looking forward to some sort of medicine that can be used for methamphetamines. And there isn't an efficacious medicine yet. And as we see a new surge in methamphetamine use, a medicine will be critical to helping address that as well.
So to the therapist friend of mine who's in private practice, things have changed, right? We keep people in residential care for 2 or 3 years. We don't lock them in rooms. And the other thing is, in our program, you can walk out anytime you want, right?
Yep. You don't have to be here. And we'll help, if you don't want to be here, we'll help you transition to another organization or another level of care, so that, we realize that some people do really well in this setting in our program. Sometimes people need to go to a different agency, and that makes sense. And that's why we cross-refer to other organizations, because that's what's appropriate.
And I should say we're celebrating, next year is our 50th anniversary. And I even though I'm prejudiced because I work here, I would say one of the reasons that we've had such longevity is we have made those changes, because we've had to make those changes, right?
Well, yeah, it's not just having to make the changes. It's that, as I said early on, that we started as an organization that was forward thinking. And so that's the philosophy that certainly I bring to the table, is that we need to continue to look at what's the best treatment method for people who are suffering from addiction or mental health. And as new data comes, we'll adapt to that and add new things or drop things. It's just like our colleagues in physical medicine. You learn new treatments as things come up. We don't bloodlet anymore. There are things that used to happen and we know don't really work, where there's better treatment than that.
We don't use leeches to get rid of bruises anymore.
Right, exactly.
Actually, when I dated a woman in Detroit years ago in a Polish neighborhood, and they still had tanks of leeches that you could buy at a pharmacy, and then you were supposed to put them on bruises. So it was pretty incredible. Big changes. Well,
yeah, glad we don't do that anymore.
I don't know if you realize, Adam, but this podcast, we've done analytics on it. It's heard in we have listeners in Russia, Iran, a big following in Switzerland. So you're famous coming on here.
Well, that's incredible. I'm surprised to hear that, and I'm glad to meet all of you virtually.
Now I've said, and I may put this on an expense account, even though I'm a recovering alcoholic, and we obviously don't advocate drinking. I've said to any of my Russian followers that if you come over to the United States, I'll buy you a good bottle of vodka as opposed to the cheap Russian vodka that you're drinking. So I may put that on an expense account.
Yeah, unless they need treatment, then no vodka.
There you go. And what about that raise I asked for?
Oh yeah, it's coming.
So's Christmas, right?
Uh-huh.
Well, Christmas is coming before that, right? Adam Cohen has been our guest. He's the CEO at Odyssey House. He is my boss, and I hope it hasn't sounded like I tried to kiss his butt or anything, or try to get you into Odyssey House, because we're trying to make this an honest look at addiction and recovery. And again, if you want to call in and get any information at all, it's 801-322-3222. And as long as COVID is around, you'll probably be seeing us on Zoom with my various guests. And after that, we will have a new studio and a new co-host, which I will introduce you to as soon as this whole stupid pandemic is over. So thank you for watching Odyssey House Journals.